that Steve's been working for 30 years. What if and when disclosure takes place, what is the fundamental change, everyone, Steve, JJ, Desiree, John Martin, that we see in the world? How is that? What's the immediate impact of whoever is the disclosure president coming forward? Okay, Steve, what do you think the immediate impact for the society is?
Asked that question many times. All right, first, it'll be the biggest event in human history.
Right.
It's coming at a time when virtually, with few exceptions, every single person can actually watch if they want to. That total number of people that will be watching press conferences and other presentations will number in the billions, because this is an absolute universal compelling thing. All right. That's a big deal right there. And so you're going to have individuals or heads of state that are going to be giving some press conference in the audience, assuming they can rig up all the feeds when they can. Billions of people are going to be hearing this. There's going to be a massive demand for information, millions of questions. The press will be apoplectic practically. It will be somewhat chaotic because everybody's going to want to know everything all at once. That's not the way it's going to go. So that's the initial thing. That's just kind of very mechanical. But what will start happening after they immediately after disclosure, the formal disclosure, the capital D, that's what I'm interested in. People have all kinds of definition of disclosure. I'm only interested in one, and that's the confirmation from a head of state.
Right.
Is that everybody's worldview will start changing, whether they want to or not. Right? This piece of information is not trivial. And as that starts to sink in, they're going to start to think about the world a little bit differently. Some will very quickly advance in that area. Others, it'll be very subtle. And this, Danny Sheehan certainly talks about this at length. I try to. This change has the potential to take us where we have to go to avoid the calamity that we seem to inevitably face, this worldview change. And one of the ways I describe it is dropping a panel, one of these beautiful films where you slow motion drop a pebble into absolutely still water. And what happens is these big waves come out in all directions, and then they just go out and slowly they dissipate. This will be the opposite of that, right? It's not really physically possible, but you drop the pebble into that still pond, call that the human race, and it starts out with tiny little waves in all directions. But as time goes by, they get higher and higher and higher as the worldview change starts to take hold and manifest, and then the research and the understanding grows, and all those things come out of that. And so that where we'll be 2 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10, 12, 20 years post-disclosure, Lord knows where we'll be, but it will be a place quite different than where we are now. That is the best way I could describe the most profound event in human history and what happens next.
Well, JJ's been at this since the 70s or earlier. JJ, what's your opinion?
I agree with Steve. I think the drama when Ronald Reagan went to the United Nations, and he gave the scenario of how countries could come together when the ET presence was fully understood as a threat rather than as a hope. I would like to feel this will be a situation of a hope rather than a threat. I mean, that would be the ideal situation. But there will be adoptions of all philosophies and particularly theologies to the fact that there is a universal side to the fact that we are one of many evolutions. We are one of many archetypal systems of spiritual self-realization. And the hope would be that there would be a follow-through program engineered now going forward that would give us the sociology and psychology of positive thinking and fellowship. Networking through fellowship, through new science and spiritual philosophy that is universal will give people an opportunity to raise their consciousness and ride out the waves or balance as a type of surfing on the order of magnitude that we're going to face as a planetary population.
Right. So Reagan really suggested that facing a common extraterrestrial challenge could set aside global differences and foster cooperation. So this is something that he believed. You know why he believed that? Because when he was in Bakersfield, when he was governor, he saw something flying from Bakersfield to Southern California. And my friend's mother actually was Lucy Obal. She was at the party where he was going to as a fundraising. And he talked to all the party people that were there, including Shirley MacLaine, about what he had seen, that he had seen a UFO. So he was very aware of that.
Let's talk about Reagan. This is a famous moment. He did it more than once, brought it up a number of times. It was kind of related to the SDI program, which they had tried to get going and so forth. A lot of pushback. Scientists weren't happy. But think about it. Of course, this is back then. All right. He helped ultimately bring around the end of the Cold War. Cold War I didn't last too long. Now we're in Cold War II. But what he's saying is this. He's relying on the standard operating procedure of the human race, which goes back thousands and thousands of years. If there was an external threat to the entire globe, then the countries and the peoples of the world with different religions and ethnicities and politics and skin color and everything else would come together to deal with this threat. In other words, what can bring us together is abject fear. Back then, in that circumstance, the time, think about it, that's the way you would go, right? In other words, we just need to have a common fear and we'll get together. Now, you can see how that's not particularly an effective way to go about it, because now everybody's scared. ETs are the threat. We're all going to get together. We really don't like each other still. We still hate each other. There's still plenty, but we'll overcome that and get together. There's two problems with that. That won't last very long, right? Eventually, we'll be fighting again because we've been doing it for thousands of years. And then there's the fact that this thing that's now the threat to us, there is no way to deal with that threat. We're done. The extraterrestrials can do away with us like that. It wouldn't even be difficult. There is nothing we could do against a true extraterrestrial threat. So the whole idea was fundamentally flawed, but so appropriate for the time. And so what we've been trying to do, and a lot of very nice people have been working at it as best we can, to try to give an alternative outcome, an alternative situation here, because there is enough known about what ETs do and don't do, and from contactees and other things I've mentioned, turning off nuclear weapons, right? To know that no, they're not really a threat, anything like he is saying, right? But they are a profound influence. And that ultimately, the reason we must finally confirm this truth to us so that everybody understands this is part of the reality of the world, all right, is there are a lot of extremely positive aspects in a post-disclosure world, right? Meaning that there's technology that suddenly is going to be available we desperately need that's been sequestered. There's going to be an opportunity for people to now to talk and discuss and engage. What does it mean to have these entities? What does it mean that there are other entities out there? The Catholic Church talks about how they'll baptize them. All of it. This is all pretty positive stuff. It's not extremely one way or the other, right? Are they a threat? No. And if they are a threat, well, wrap it up, folks. Put your affairs in order because it's over. All right. But if they are not a threat, whatever they are, then is what we will learn about, what we need to know about. And that is complicated. You know, the old simple, we come together for a threat, makes for a good speech, a good line. And I'm not criticizing Ronald Reagan, but I assure you, that's kindergarten level analysis, right? We're now very sophisticated in the public arena about this, but that sophistication has been achieved through enormous time and effort and sacrifice. 90% of it wasn't even needed, but the government decided to embargo this and stretch it out for 80 years. And one of the tragedies that the historians will talk about, you know, with 2020 hindsight, down the line, 50, 60, 80, 100 years from now, is they're going to say, what a tragic thing happened there. What do I mean by that? This is an important point. During that period, from the time we dropped the nuclear weapons and we have the Roswell event, right in there, right about that period, the population of the planet was about 3 billion people. 80 years go by and the population is 8.3 billion people. 5.3 more billion people, well, are now than then, but it's worse than that because the number of people that actually were born into the world since that time going forward is another 5 billion. And so during that 80 years, 13 billion people entered this world with the need for clothing and shelter and food, and water and air and everything else. They needed that stuff and it wasn't available. We needed desperately technological innovations that would transcend this incredible population increase. We didn't have it. The government kept it from us and spent trillions of dollars on what? War and defense and all that other stuff. We didn't have a chance to examine the way we conduct our world affairs, which is endless war, endless destruction, in the light of the knowledge of and the worldview of that we're not alone. They denied that to us. And as a result, the amount of human suffering that has taken place in the last 80 years literally transcends all of the human suffering prior to that. And because you live in a nice place or you got a nice condo or you live in America, you may not really be fully aware of it. But if you start to look at it, and there are people that are doing that, what was the circumstance for the lives of the 12 billion people that turned up in this world, and maybe still in this world, from the time of Roswell? And let me tell you, it is awful. And that is a tragedy. And they will ask us, why were you thinking? Right? Didn't you understand that if you're going to have a population increase, you need every aspect of technology, right? And then, of course, we've also suppressed and put forward the possibility of directly engaging the ETs. It's very possible if we disclosed in 1947, which Truman could have done. Hell, we could have been hanging out with ETs for the last 60 years. All of these things were erased by that policy. Let me be clear. The truth embargo policy instituted, whatever the rationale, and there's some very interesting reasons, was one of the most calamitous decisions ever made by any government or any leader in the history of this entire planet. It transcends it all. And not enough, well, let me put it this way. My job has been from the beginning to pound that in. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a journalist. I'm not a contactee. Okay. I'm not a philosopher. I'm an activist. And what the activists do is relentlessly pound in a point, hopefully, that is valid, that is essential to the dilemma that we face. And that's what I do. And if I'm wrong, I will apologize. But I don't think I'm wrong. And the idea of being overly optimistic on something like this, you cannot be too optimistic. You have to be relentless in that it can be done. We will get there. And if people say, well, just, if it's not, you can't, it's not happening, so shut up and go away. Well, then what? Then what? People are going to say, oh, what the hell? Right? No. So
Right.
we're closing in a point now where the catastrophic potential for still keeping this policy as we approach nuclear war, right? Like somebody driving 100 miles an hour drunk down a highway, the potential disaster is now magnified. And still not quite there, except we are almost there. And if it takes the Epstein scandal to give the proper motivation to the 14th president in this matter since Roswell to finally come out and end it so we can all start moving forward, great. Thank you, Jeffrey. Right? That's something good you did with that awful, pathetic life of yours. And if the people are going to be embarrassed and get sued or go to jail, well, it's a small price to pay.